Well, Dr. Peter Navarro, so glad to finally have a discussion with you. Huge fans, Joe and I both. We've been following your work, especially well during the Trump years with trade and with China, your expertise there. And then following the election, I don't know if anybody has been as instrumental as you in a lot of regards with the material you've released and the things that are very sensible things you came out with. That shows that this election was far from flawless. And so thank you for your time. I'm with my twin brother, Joe. He started writing for Gateway Pundit earlier this year full time, or I guess it was late last year. And Joe is an international auditor. He's done audits all over the world. He was a vice president of a top insurance corporation in Hong Kong for at least 10 years. And now he's writing for Gateway Pundit. So he brings that expertise to us, which has been incredible, especially watching this election and seeing that they could have used a couple good auditors there.
Just a couple.
Trump team. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for joining us.
Well, a couple of lawyers too. I don't know if you do that.
That isn't my expertise, no. But we've done pretty well with Gateway Pundit and one of the top 3 or 4 conservative websites in the country today. And it's all, and that's with all the attacks we get and the censorship and the filtering and everything else they do against us. So I'm sure you're very aware of that. Anyway.
Yes, indeed.
So we wanted to ask you, Arizona's winding down, and we wanted to get your thoughts on that. We want to get your thoughts on what's going to happen next, if you have any feel on that, and what to expect from Arizona. And then we had a few more questions, to talk about during our time with you today.
Sure. Let me for your viewers and listeners, let me give you a little backstory here to get us into this. So you start on November 3rd, the midnight of November 3rd, and we were in a situation where it was very clear that President Trump was going to win the election. We had Florida and Ohio, both in the bag, and in the battleground states, the blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, there were insurmountable leads. And with all of that, we had an electoral college victory, no problem. But then by the next morning, all of that faded into Biden blue. And for about a week or so after that, I went about my business at the White House, just working on executive orders that we needed to get to the finish line. I kept thinking that somebody was going to kind of get into this election fraud issue, and nobody did. So finally, I said, hey, let me figure out what's going on here, because this thing stunk to high heaven. It just
absolutely.
You just do the numbers. It didn't look. So the first thing I did, which was codified in my first report, which called the Immaculate Deception, is I wanted to see exactly what had happened, right? There were a lot of allegations about fraud, theft, and this kind of thing. But when I looked into this, and what I did was read thousands of affidavits, declarations, cases, this, that, and the other thing, I found that the issue is much more textured. And what I did was I separated what went on into like 6 different forms of fraud and election irregularities. There's the outright fraud, like dead people voting,
sure.
But you also had things like equal protection issues and violations where Republican observers in places like Detroit and Milwaukee were being barred from observing the ballot count because they were Republicans. And so that first report went six irregularity types deep across the 6 battleground states, came up with one matrix. One matrix is worth 1,000 steals. And my conclusion from that was like, hey, this is kind of interesting. These are very narrow margins. Every state was different in its own way as to how the theft took place. And I found that fascinating. And when I released that report, the immediate reaction I got was, how the heck did they do that? Right. So that's when I did the second report, The Art of the Steal. And that one frames the whole issue, because what I found out there was simply that we had a Democrat strategy that started basically from the very minute that Trump got elected. And it was a two-pronged strategy. It was like, okay, the grand stuff the ballot box strategy was like, hey, let's stuff the ballot box with absentee and mail-in ballots. Because we know, as the Carter-Baker Commission told us, that's the easiest way to slip illegal ballots into the flow. And then simultaneously, the second prong was to basically take the election cops off the beat, basically to eliminate signature matching and other kinds of scrutiny that would basically be able to detect these illegal ballots. And so with that strategy, they were able to stuff the ballot box with enough illegal votes to tip the scale. Now, getting fast forward to today, I think the value of my reports, and they're up on peternavarro.com, along with the third report, Yes, Trump Won. And what the tables in my reports serve as are the templates for the investigations, right? So if you go into Arizona, what I've done is I've cataloged each of the different kinds of fraud and irregularities by the number of potential ballots. And so, again, every state is unique, but as Arizona has been going in there, the first thing they've done is to look at the count itself, right, which is important. But my mantra on War Room Pandemic with Bannon has been, it's the canvas, not the count. The count's important, but the canvas is where you uncover the real problems. And what do I mean by that? It's like when Kennedy stole the election from Nixon with the help of Mayor Richard Daley in Chicago, it was all about the canvas. What Mayor Daley did was he had about 39,000 ghost and dead voters in Chicago cast ballots on behalf of Kennedy, right? And the way you would find those, say, ghost voters, what do I mean by that? A ghost voter is somebody, ballot comes in from 101 Main Street, right? From John Smith. You go to 101 Main Street, you canvass that address, there's no John Smith there, right? Gone.
Right.
And that's a ghost voter. So that's why the second phase in Arizona, this canvas is going to be really important. The other thing I'll tell you is that as we're finding things out in Arizona, it's the one fall, they all fall. We're seeing now Georgia wants to go down this path using the template of Arizona and kind of the template of what I've laid out in my report. We just found out recently that the chain of custody has been broken on enough ballots to swing the election alone in Georgia, and so it goes. So that's the big picture, guys. Hit me with a question.
Well, I was thinking, go ahead, Joe.
Let me jump in on a couple here. First of all, it's an honor to be here and to listen to you, Doctor. We're huge fans. The thing that Jim and I realized very quickly, and being from an auditor's perspective right after the election, was this steal was not small, and you're not going to find it by just looking for dead voters. It had to be something big. It was massive, because they're saying Joe Biden, to this day, they're saying Joe Biden got 81 million votes. That makes no sense. And we see that state after state after state. So I guess so that was kind of our perspective as we started getting into this. We started looking for the big ticket items, and it sure seems to be a lot of that is surrounding the absentee ballots. And now what's really popped up and has for some time is this, what you just mentioned, the chain of custody. And it looks like what we've known about this for months is that in Georgia, there's like, at one point they were saying 400,000, now they're saying 300,000 chain of custody or ballots without chain of custody documentation. Now, I believe that's probably across the board. We know in Arizona right now that they have not provided any chain of custody documentation as was requested from the auditors in Maricopa County. And we know in Wisconsin, for example, all these ballots, the indefinitely confined individuals, except plus the absentee ballots, plus whatever happened in Milwaukee, probably enough there. We could go to every state. Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
Trump
let
was
me show
ahead.
you. Let me show you something. I can bring this in. This is like a table from my report for the state of Arizona, right? And for your viewers, the bottom line where it says 24x, what that tells you is that there's 24 times the amount of potentially illegal ballots as there are relative to the alleged Biden victory margin, which is slim, right? It's like 11 to 12,000 votes, right? So that's like, I mean, that right off the bat hits you in the forehead. In Georgia, the cesspool of Georgia is actually 50 times.
Doctor,
okay?
I noticed.
And if
I'm
you
sorry
look
to
at this
interrupt.
table, if you look at this table as an auditor, you will see each of the different categories where you can go out and basically get the receipts essentially. Anyway, go ahead. I
was sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry, but I noticed in that list there you don't have specifically for Arizona these chain of custody documentation, because now that's sprouting up. That might be a huge deal if they don't have documentation for all those absentee ballots in Maricopa. So that's even more, right?
Yeah, and what was interesting is like in Maricopa County, the Board of Supervisors they're all Republicans, but from the very beginning, they resisted any cooperation. And my theory in Arizona has always been that the state Republican Party there is controlled by a McCain wing, a John McCain wing. And of course, as you know, it's like Hatfield's and McCoy's between McCain and Donald Trump, which is unfortunate that the McCain wing would turn over the presidency and the White House to and the Senate, by the way, to the Democrats just because they hate Donald Trump. I mean, but now I think it's also true that I think Maricopa County Board of Supervisors understood maybe from the beginning that they had real issues with how they conducted that election, including chain of custody and all other manner of things. Illegal alien voting, I suspect, is going to be a big deal there, enough to swing the election. And so, they're running for cover. You mentioned Wisconsin and the whole indefinitely confined voters. I think so that we don't have inside baseball, I think for your viewers, it's important to point out what happened in Wisconsin. We had a situation where the Democrat election officials basically used the pandemic as a way to stuff the ballot box with absentee ballots. They said basically, hey, we have this category indefinitely confined voters. It's reserved for usually for the very, very elderly people who can't leave the house and who are fragile. And what we're going to do is like anybody who wants to be that can be that. Okay. And all well and good. But the problem with that is you have significantly less identification check for indefinitely confined voters. And so what we saw was the Democrats actively soliciting, registering as indefinitely confined voters so you could like escape any scrutiny. And we saw a more than doubling, and I think it may even be a tripling in the amount of voters we had in that category alone. Again, it's like any single category in some of these places was enough to swing the election alone. But John, as you said, this is very complex, and there's just a lot of different ways they went about this.
Right. And they absolutely did. I had a question, Doctor. We saw yesterday the news broke. Are you guys hearing me at all? Anyway, the news broke that in Arizona, up near Prescott, they're starting to get complaints from individuals who called into the county sheriff's office and said that they were being harassed and that these canvassers were asking them who they voted for. Did they vote for Joe Biden or not? Now, this looks like to many people, this looks like a ploy by the Democrats to make it look like these canvassers are up to no good, asking illegal questions. And I'm wondering, is this how the DOJ sneaks into the state, takes action against the audit, and is that going to be possible?
Well, look, that's not what canvassers do. The canvassers, the question about who you voted for will never come up with a canvasser, okay, if they're doing their job correctly, which they will, okay? The only thing a canvasser wants to make sure of is that if a vote came from a person with a particular name from a particular dress, was that person, and is that person a legal voter? Okay, that's all canvassers does. It's like this is not like who'd you vote for or who you going to vote. No. So look, dirty tricks, right? The Democrats are going to do everything they can to disrupt this whole canvass and count. I thought it was really interesting in Arizona, right? They had guards, sheriffs, right, assigned their mission. They had only one mission: guard that arena. Don't let anybody in, right? And sure enough, it looked like one of these like TV mysteries, right, where mysteriously the two sheriffs like disappear, right? They go disappear, and as soon as they disappear, in comes a burglar, right? And then the next thing you know, the Democrats are crying that the chain of custody was broken in Arizona. What's funny about that is if they want to die on that hill, then let's die on that hill in Georgia and Wisconsin where the chain of custody has been broken. I mean, Zuckerberg, huge villain in this piece, okay? Zuckerberg spent more money in the battleground states than the Trump campaign trying to privatize the election. He paid for all these drop boxes in Wisconsin, for example, which allow basically it's an open invitation to stuff the drop box so you can stuff the ballot box. And there's no chain of custody. You don't know who put that stuff in the drop box.
Sure.
They just drop them in, right? So yes, I mean, to your point, that's probably a ploy by the Democrats to sow misinformation. CNN and MSNBC will pick it up and make it a story. Yeah. But I view this as a long battle, right? This is going to be a constant battle. And what's on our side are the facts and the receipts because they stole it.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Joe.
Those are all great points.
You guys lose your sound every once in a while. As soon as you come back and talk, for some reason your sound's bad. So just make sure you're on your mics.
Yeah. Okay. This is Joe again. So I don't know if you have any insights on Arizona, but we're kind of interested in these other states. We're seeing, and I'd like your perspective on this. We're seeing that some of these, even Republican legislatures, seem very hesitant to want to jump in and do some sort of audit work now on the election, whether that be Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. Some of the audits that they've already laid out, they're not really audits. And I speak this from a corporate auditor who's done audits around the world. What's your perception there? Are we going to get a buy-in from these locations?
Well, again, let's do the big picture for your viewers, right? 5 out of the 6 battlegrounds where this election can be won have Republican-controlled legislatures. So in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that's 5, all Republican legislatures. And then Nevada's Democrat, right? So if you go and look at kind of the problems, Arizona was the first to stand tall as a legislature, and they're doing that very well. The problem we have in Georgia is not the legislature, it's the governor, Brian Kemp, and the Secretary of State, Raffensperger. what the state legislature in Georgia is ready to go with the Arizona model right now, but Kemp and Raffensperger refused to call a special session. So we'll see how that kind of pans out. But the news we had yesterday of the admission of guilt in Fulton County on the chain of custody issue, I think will help, but we just have to keep the heat on there. Now, if you go to some of the other states, there's pressure in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania in the legislature, but it's an uncertain trumpet, right? They haven't steeled their spine yet, and what programs like you're doing and your website and the articles you do are part of the sunlight, right? That's going to put a glaring light on the problem there and push that political process along. And slowly but surely things are moving in a better direction. But my own view is that it's the Bannon canon, one fall, they all fall. As soon as we get definitive proof in Arizona or Georgia, that will certainly make it impossible for these other states not to do what needs to be done. So again, this is a political process. It's a long haul. There's going to be good days and bad days, but the momentum is clearly moving towards us, and we do have the facts on our side. All you have to do is read my 3 reports, and you will be convinced that there's a problem that we need to investigate. And the American people understand this. I mean, half of the American people think that election was stolen. I mean, that's an unacceptable result in this republic because it undermines the very fabric of our society.
And that's still today that they still believe that the election was stolen. Another question then is, it appears that we have Raffensperger today. He is saying that he agrees with the investigation and he wants to look into the election now. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the heat on Raffensperger and Kemp is incendiary right now, and what's taking them so long? So, Brian, if you want to get going here, let's get going. Raffensperger, let's get going. Let's move. You say you want to do it, let's do it. Special session of the legislature, off we go.
There's a number of people that believe that this election wasn't just stolen in these swing states, the 6 or so that you've identified, but in numerous states, Minnesota, New Hampshire, the list goes on and on. People have sent us information from Rhode Island saying, hey, after that, what that governor did with COVID, this state turned red. There was Trump signs everywhere. Yeah. We're hearing that across Colorado. Some people in California believe that Trump won there. What are your thoughts on those states?
Well, I think 2 things. One is that in some sense I buried the lead, and I always remind Bannon that anytime we talk about this issue, we need to point out that they stole the Senate as well. In Georgia, Purdue almost certainly should have been elected. And in Arizona, McSally almost certainly should have been elected. Mm-hmm. And then across these other states, I'm sure there was some seats that we lost, red seats that we lost through this ballot box stuffing strategy because, again, it was an open invitation to fraud. So it's heartening to see New Hampshire is really fired up about this. But to quote the evil Mao Zedong, one spark can start a prairie fire, and I think that prairie fire is going around the country right now.
Absolutely, and all of these states need to hold their own audits, we hope we see that happen. We're hearing that a lot, so we agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. So what's your final thoughts on what's going to happen here? Maybe your prognosis or your maybe prophecy of the future. What do you think is going to all
prophecy. Well, let me look at my crystal ball here. I see Merrick Garland going to jail if he ever goes into Arizona, tries to enforce that edict that he tried to throw down on the Arizonas. Those folks are not happy about that. I think that this is going to be a battle. The problem we had going into the election is that the Democrats are better organized and have a bigger legal team. I mean, they've literally thrown 1,000 lawyers into Arizona right now. So they're going to do everything they can to disrupt that process and discredit that process. They've got CNN, they've got MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Amazon Post all on their side as well. So this is a battle of our lives, gentlemen. This is the battle of our lives. If this election result stands, and we don't get to the bottom of what actually happened, this will be the end of American democracy as we know that.
Absolutely.
That's not hyperbole. It's just a fact, and it's been great to be with you, gentlemen. We'll do it again.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
Doctor.
your time.
All right, you guys take care of yourself. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world.